Hi, aloha, and welcome to the Empowered Empath podcast. My name is Jennifer O'Neill.
And I'm Michelle Schneider, giving you a friendly reminder that if you like today's podcast, please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yes, and we're having some technical difficulties apparently with being blurry or things happening. So if you see that, just ignore it. It typically happens when I'm getting ready to publish a class, a book. There's all kinds of spirit interference, which will also go with the podcast of today. I want to talk about spiritual development and basically why. Why do you want to develop your spiritual senses? And then Michelle keeps telling me, you look blurry and I see weird lights around your head. So
You did say that in the energy report that there would be increased spirit activity. So,
yeah, 100%. Absolutely. So that being said, I've had a lot of questions recently, either from clients or I guess clients would ask me because people are asking them, why would you spend money to develop your spiritual senses? Why would you get into spiritual development? And I think that it's confusing for a lot of people on a couple different levels. So let's talk a little bit about spiritual development and developing your spiritual senses. A lot of people want to achieve a higher spiritual status so that their quality of life will shift and they will experience things differently. And while I think that that is important, they feel that they need a shift or a change in life and that it will enhance their quality of life, which is what you were talking about, right? Isn't that
yeah.
what you said?
Yeah.
That
I think, people want to feel like their intuition is on point. They want to increase their intuition because we want to use it as a guide. We want to feel like we can use it as a tool to help enhance our lives.
mhm. Right. And what you were saying earlier, I think, is also important, which was you were talking about when you did you say when you were born, you thought that
Oh, before we hopped on the podcast, I
yes,
was like, I used to have a thought when I was younger. I was like, you were either born psychic or you weren't. Like, you either had it or you didn't. And
right,
there wasn't any way to improve upon that.
right. Well, I think that we want to talk about the improving upon first. That is not true that you cannot improve upon it. So hopefully most people who've listened to the podcast or have listened to me so far understand that that is not true. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit. But yes, I think that what draws people into spirituality and wanting to develop on a spiritual level is a lot of different things. I think it's having a calmer lifestyle, peaceful lifestyle, feeling more fulfilled, quality of life enhancement, that sort of thing. And I think that there's also a sense of power, I think, that comes with that, that people want to feel like they have more control or more knowledge of what might come in their life or more of a powerful guidance system. And that is true in a lot of different aspects. When you do develop your spiritual senses, it does pull a side of yourself forward that becomes more dominant, which would be the spiritual body. The spiritual body becomes more dominant. And when it does, you tap into an energetic power, spiritual trust that you lack when your physical body is dominant, you know? And when your physical body is dominant, it makes you feel fearful, helpless, worried, and fragile to a point because you start to feel like life is happening to you and you have no control. There's nothing you can do about it. You are subject to all these different moving parts that you just happen to fall in this barrel with. And the building blocks will fall where they may. You may get some things that you want, you may not. And that's not really how things work. That's a physically based mindset. That is not things that is not how things actually work. And when you start to tune into your spiritual body and you work with spiritual development, you begin to not only learn just from a knowledge standpoint that that's not how things work, but you begin to witness things within your own personal experience that reflect that's not how things work. And when you work within your own personal guidance system, like you were talking about, you again start to see things that reflect that guidance system's on point. That's steering me a direction that I never would have went. That has information that my brain doesn't have access to. There's something to this. And I think that that's the huge draw is people want to experience it. And it's also the draw of experiencing it when you start to go down that route. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So developing on a spiritual level, however, I also feel like to your point of I felt like some people had it and other people didn't. I think that people don't realize that takes training. And when you don't realize it takes training, I think that you can fall within that mindset very easily because you can start going, well, I know people who have this intuitive ability, and I know people who have a psychic ability or mediumship, or they have thoughts or feelings and things that happen to them. And I've just never had that. I'm not one of those people. I think that they can fall within that mindset, and then it can feel very frustrating and discouraging and make you not want to do that.
Yeah, I would say that the funny thing though is growing up, I did feel like, I would know things before they happen. I would
Mhm.
have all these like intuitive hit, but I'd be like, I'm not psychic. That's not me. Like I didn't like connect those dots really. So it
If
wasn't
I
like a
had $1 for every time that somebody said, I have no abilities, I'm not psychic, I'm not me, I can't do this, and I'm like, give me 20 minutes, give me 5 minutes, literally just give me 5 minutes. I definitely can prove you wrong in 1 hour. Like, if I had $1, I would never have to work again. I would be like incredibly rich because people say that all the time. And I like that you brought that up because I do think that that is a very common mindset that well, that's not me, or I can't do that because they
like I'm
want,
not special. Like that's
yes,
it was more of like how I felt.
yes. And I think that they see other people that have polished that ability and that skill or have spent many years training, and they compare themselves to those people. And that's not a fair way to compare yourself. And how I would like to explain that to people is if you are interested in developing your spiritual senses and spiritual development as a whole, what I don't care what the reason is, whether you want to be a healer, you're drawn to it, you just want to enhance your life, you need a change, nothing's working for you, you would like a more clear compass, you're tired of the way that things are going. No matter what your reasoning is, you will need to train your spiritual senses. You are not just going to understand how to work with those. And the way I explain that to people is I think that people often forget how long that they worked with their physical body to get it to do the things that it does. We've been an adult for so long in our life that we're like thinking, oh, yeah, but I mean, yeah, you just naturally learn to walk and crawl and eat and whatever. You know how many months and years that people have worked with you as a baby, as a small child, to teach you how to speak, to teach you language, to teach you how to balance. I mean, you're working on balance with your babies, when they're a couple months old. You're holding them up on your lap, you're allowing them to balance a little bit, walking, talking, all of the things. You are working on these for, anywhere from a year to 2 years every single day. You're working on developing your physical abilities every day of your life for 1 to 2 years. And then you continue. You don't just stop at age 2.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
get
just think about athletes. I mean,
right.
Simone Biles didn't come out of the womb doing
No,
handsprings. Like, that took years to become an Olympic gymnast.
right. So most people have developed their physicality for most of your entire life. You get better at it in your teenage years. When you're 7, when you're 10, and when you're whatever, you're learning how far you can run and jump. You're learning how fast you can go. You're learning to spell better. You're teaching your brain how to work with your hands. When you're a baby, you're just shoving things in your mouth. You're shoving crayons in there. You're shoving baby toys. If there's a bug, you'd pick it up and shove it in your mouth. And you have adults going, "No, don't do that. Don't stick that in your mouth. What are you doing? No, that's bad." Well, I feel like the same happens on a spiritual level. Everybody is just shoving things in their mouth, going, "Well, this isn't working. Clearly, this is not working." No, because you ate 10 crayons. It's not working. You don't understand. Don't put the crayons in your mouth. You need to understand how to work with your spiritual senses. So, a lot of times, what people think is working with their intuition, working with their psychic ability, clearing up their spiritual compass. They're not doing it properly. I would bet more often than not, absolutely, if you feel like you're not developing properly, if you do not feel like you have a skill, and of course, you remember times in your life where you've had this hit and that hit, you are not working with your skill properly. You are not learning proper techniques. You are not learning how your spiritual senses work. Everybody assumes that your spiritual senses, which let's talk about, you have your all the clairs, the clairvoyance, the clairaudience, that sort of thing. For those people who do not know what it is, I want to talk very simple, basic terms, which is clear seeing, clear hearing, touching, smelling, all of these, feeling. These are
Knowing.
all knowing. These are all part of your spiritual senses. All of these things, being able to tune in to aspects of your spiritual body that are very similar to aspects of your physical body. And they're there for a reason. But you had to teach your brain how to work with your fingers, your toes, your balance. There was a process where your brain learned what to do, not to touch hot or maybe even severe cold, but that there was temperature differences, how to balance, how not to fall over, how to run, how to walk. Your brain learned this with you, with your consciousness. It learned it together. And how many years have you spent developing your spirituality, your spiritual senses? I'll just ask you, when you were younger, how many years did you?
0.
Right. How many years do you feel like you spent in your adult life?
You were asking me to do math? What's 2017? I say 2017 was about the year that I was like,
But
"Hey."
so that's like 7 years. You've spent
Yeah.
7 years actively working in developing your spiritual dictionary. You spent this actively learning how to develop your skills, and I have to tell you, even when you attended the retreat in October, you came in going, "Yeah, I'm not really sure I really have any abilities. I'm not really sure why I'm here." So, I mean, that was still 6 years, okay? So 6 years. Now you left a totally different person. Am I wrong?
No,
Right?
you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's okay. So you left understanding, and your abilities have then developed even way more vastly, I would say. Do you think?
I just feel like everything that I've been learning, whether
Mhm.
it's about myself or like even some of the practicing that I've been doing, I would say things are developing.
Right. But I would say way more rapidly,
Yes.
clearly from then. That being said, there are points that also happens where you gain knowledge, you're reading everything that you can read, you're listening to podcasts, you're practicing different techniques. There is a point that if you do want to get into like the healing field or you want to develop your skill to the best of your ability, that you may potentially need a teacher or training. That's the route that you went. That's the route that many of my clients have gone clearly. They tried for a number of years to develop it on their own, and then they ended up with a mentor, myself, or other people, and then myself. That's what you do. You invest in your skills so that you can gain the knowledge on how to practice these techniques properly, and you can get proper feedback. That's very, very important. I think that people just assume if you read and listen to podcasts and practice techniques, they're just going to develop to the degree that they want to. You will, to a point, but it depends on what your end game is. What's your end game? What's your end goal? I mean, I could say I've been actively practicing and polishing my techniques for as 50 some years, as old as I am, and I can't believe I just said that. That being said, um I have been actively working with that. I didn't get a mentor till I was in my 20s. My skill was pretty developed when I was born, though, so that's not really fair. I also practiced a lot of um, psychic and spiritual stuff, even in my like age below 10. Like, I've been practicing for years. It's just something I've always done. But there was a time that I knew I wanted to become a professional in the field. And it was important for me to polish and develop my skill to the best of my ability before I was to take on clients. So there is a point in your life that if you want to really develop it, you're most likely going to need some extra polishing and extra help so that you can understand and learn how to utilize your senses. Why does this happen when I do this? What do you think that means? Getting somebody who can help you to understand your personal unique ability, because every single person's different. So while you can get a lot of information through books and classes, and I have tons of information at empath-university.com if you want to go there, I have created very specific classes for mediumship, for empaths, for psychic stuff. You can develop a lot of your abilities through classes, but then you can also do mentorship and training. So there's books, there's podcasts, there's classes, there's mentors, and all of those are good. So it's just going to depend upon who it is, or not who it is, how far that you would like to develop your ability. Where do you want to stop? What's your end game as far as that goes? Some people, if it's just quality of life and getting a much clearer compass on their intuition and how to make decisions and how to change from a physically based mindset and a physical body dominant place and get into more a spiritual body dominant, or even to balance physical body dominant and spiritual body to where we're having like an even exchange between the two. How that's going to work for you may differ. I just want people not to get frustrated when they feel like, well, I can't get that far. If you feel that way, you need to ask yourself, how much time have you invested? Has it been months? Has it been weeks? Has it been years? If it's been years, have you found a teacher? Have you done classes? Or have you just done some online reading and books and things of that nature? Because I would say the first steps are experimenting. Second steps would be like podcasts and books and things of that nature. The next steps would be classes and or mentorship, and then retreats, like intensive retreats. So that would be the steps that you would want to take if you want to really polish. If you're kind of in the initial stages, I think podcasts such as this, or like I said, I have tons of books out there. That would be a good place to go. And then if you want to develop further, classes are going to be really good. If you're interested in what I do, empath-university.com, or whatever classes of whoever that you like out there would be a good thing to do. Then if you want to go further, mentorship and or intensive retreats, which I also do, but I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. So that would be the process, but do understand there is a process. So you need to go, what's my end game? Number one, how long have I been working on this? Weeks, months, years. Number two, if you feel stuck and you want to develop further, then you need somebody in your life who can help you with that, whether it be a teacher or classes or things of that nature. If you've been doing that and you feel stuck, but you feel like there's more you need to learn, oftentimes you've probably learned all you could from that particular teacher. So you may need a new teacher and or personal mentorship. And then you should, by that time, you should have a pretty good indication of what you're going to do with that gift. And you should be utilizing it for both. You should be utilizing it as your spiritual compass. You should be utilizing it as quality of life. While you do those things, you are training your brain, just like you did when you were a child, to work within your spiritual senses. You are training your brain to recognize your spiritual body when it becomes dominant. When your spiritual body dominant, your brain will recognize that and it can work within that realm of possibilities. You already know how to work with a physical body dominant nature. You already got that. You know what to do. So we need to give our brain information on how to work within spiritual body dominant times. You don't always stay in one or the other necessarily for long periods of times. You might even switch throughout the day, but you need to have more of a gauge. Do you have
Yeah.
anything to add to that or questions or
I was gonna throw a wrench
you're
in
almost
there.
like you're almost like what? Okay, and then you throw a wrench. Yes, throw a wrench. Love
Well, you're
wrench.
talking a lot about the physical body and the spiritual body. What about the emotional body? Where does that fold into the
That
mix somewhere?
yeah, well, it does fold into the mix because we have three bodies. We have the mind, body, spirit. People do not realize the mind part of the mind, body, spirit triangle. They know that spirit is spiritual body, body is physical body. They often don't realize that mind is the emotional body. It's not the mind, it's not the brain. And that confuses a lot of people. So we do have physical body, emotional body, spiritual body. Where the emotional body would come into play would be more along the lines of physical body as far as how you feel, how you operate, navigate through life. Your physical body has a lot of assets in your quality of life. Your emotional body will have a lot of assets in that regard too. Health, happiness, um, as far as mental health goes, physical health goes. Those tie together very similarly. The spiritual body brings the spiritual senses. So it's a very interesting triangle because the spiritual body holds some of the same types of senses that the physical body has. And then the spiritual body has a lot of information from the spirit realm and from things that you cannot see, energetic information that holds a lot of information as far as spirit realm and energetic. The emotional body holds a lot of information as far as experiences and the energetic realm. So it holds information from the energetic realm as well. The physical body does not. It holds physical information. So it holds information from the physical realm, but it also works with your physical senses. So that's different than your spiritual body. So it's like all of these things make a trifecta of uh, energy, mass, emotions, spiritual awareness, consciousness. They all have to blend together and work together in one beautiful triangle. So you don't use the emotional body as much within spiritual development of like your psychic senses in the way that you would think that it would pertain to. It pertains to your spiritual health and your physical health and your mental and emotional well-being. That is it's more of a health related situation and it holds information regarding experiences and interdimensional stuff Well, we keep getting into like a lot of really complicated things here, but
I know, and that's probably a tangent, and the reason I was kind of, like, thinking about that was just, like, with all of the things that I've learned over the past couple years and that I've dealt with, it was more of, like, I knew that emotions had a lot of effect on that, but there was, like, also a frequency thing. I mean, like, spiritually and with all the emotional stuff,
Mhm.
that I was experiencing, I was just kind of interested in how those were kind of playing
Well,
in.
yeah, it can cause you to be clouded and it can cause you to be clear as well. So that would the emotional body would hold a lot of those components to it as well. So when you work on developing your spiritual senses, you will have to do some clearing within that energetic body. That's going to have to happen to gain clarity and to release the fog and whatnot of being physical and being physical most of your life, being in survival mode most of your life. That's going to bridge the gap between your physical body and your spiritual body. It's going to kind of, you know, keep all the components together. But your physical body is based on a lot of physical information. Your spiritual body is based on a lot of spiritual information. The emotional body is going to hold a lot of those experiences in both realms together. It's going to blend everything nicely. It's going to be the glue in a sense. So there will have to be, if you want to develop nicely and properly, you will have to visit those areas within your energetic and do some clear up, cleaning up some blocks, doing some things like that. But if you get to a good teacher and you're working with certain classes, that teacher is going to help you with that or point that out if that's what you need to do. Maybe you've done some of that work on your own and maybe you've come into that teacher more clear. Maybe you haven't, but that will cause some fogginess when it comes to, yeah, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't develop. So
Yeah.
that is a good point as far as that goes. So I think just understanding how long it can take to train yourself. I feel that people can get frustrated really easily. And like I said, if I had $1 for everybody that came to me and was just like, yeah, I don't know. I really can't do this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, you can. And they're always like, so like, really? Like, you think? I'm like, 100% no, you can. And they're so dumbfounded by my confidence. They're just like, wow, okay, like she believes in me, like wholeheartedly. And then I'm like, yeah, I do. I know how this works. Done this a few times.
Well, yeah, it's
So,
just everybody is born with this ability. It's up to you to really go after and refine it.
right, it is. But that's where the podcast comes in because I don't think that people realize the process and they're just expecting that they have certain information. You cannot get to be a professional healer by just listening to some podcasts and reading some books. That's just not going to get you as polished as you want to be. That's not going to work. There's a process. Podcasts are great. Books are wonderful. All those things are wonderful. Then classes, but somewhere you got to figure out, where do you want that skill to go? What's your end game? Like I was talking about. And the end game, as far as mentor and all that, that also can be just for your personal, you know, um, experience or personal life experience and learning how to live within a physical dominant community, physically dominantly based, um, earth, house, community, whatever. It can be extremely helpful to bring change into your life, shift things for the better, understand things that you've never been taught. People do not teach what they do not understand. They do not teach what they do not find useful. And the way that things are structured when you're learning things as you grow up is, what are you talking about? You can't see that. Anything you cannot see, nobody wants to teach about. And anything that they cannot make sense of, they don't want to teach about. That, oh, that's in your imagination. It's crazy. There's no proof. There's no facts. That's not even true. There's a technique, like I was telling you, there's a technique that I use that actually gives proof to energetic experiences, things that you cannot see. It creates a physical reality out of them. And that's where, like I said, finding a good teacher does, is understanding and learning that. And then your brain's like, ooh, okay, no, that is real, that really happened, so there's techniques to that. But a lot of people aren't interested in that, that teach you how to be an adult, which is too bad if you think about it. I mean, it really is too bad, because our life encompasses so much a way you cannot see. It just truly does. I mean, I would say, I feel our life encompasses way more than we cannot see, than it
Oh,
does what we can see. And I believe in physics, I think that they're saying what you can see is like 5% or 6% or something, the physicality of just existence of all things. So if you even just go, oh, we're going to push it a little bit and say, let's just say it's 10 or 20. Are you kidding me? Like, and that's what it feels like to me. It feels like that's pretty accurate. And
yeah.
so we have learned such a small portion. Maybe that's why they say we only use a tiny part of our brain, because that part of our brain is really just working with all the physical things. I don't know. So it's educating yourself and learning, and I just want to repeat, educating yourself. You are educating yourself in spirituality and spiritual development and how your spiritual senses work. That is key to development. That makes sense?
Yes.
Anything you would like to add?
I don't think so. Only that if you have questions or anything that you want to know more about, just leave those in the comments, and make sure you like the video and subscribe if you haven't.
Yes. And like always, hopefully you found this helpful, and we will be back next week. So until then, have the most amazing day. Aloha. Bye.
Bye.